Okay, today is November the 7th. This is part 2 of our interview with Duncan Teague. We are still at his house, but it's a different day. He has on different costume, and we're going to resume our interview with Duncan. And we've gotten up to the part about where GSV enters your life. Why don't you tell us if it was through a particular person or if you had heard about it before you heard it from that person?
I heard about it from several people, but I try to remember. Of course, Joe mentioned it.
He had been to conferences before?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think I'm not sure, but I think Joe was part of the running water thing, or knew of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Had you
Running water precedes Gay Spirit Vision.
Right. And had you gone to running water?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No.
Okay. What was going on in your life, if you can remember, stuff that was going on then, that made you receptive to going? Why did you say, okay, I'll go?
I wasn't receptive.
Okay.
And they did nothing to make it receptive. I'm not trying to be nasty, but it's outside of the circle of men who would typically go to Gay Spirit Vision, they did nothing to make it appealing to new and different kinds of people.
Okay.
And it took me a moment to get over that. That they were very happy with who came. And that diversity was essentially a few, no, it was a handful, maybe more than a handful of folks involved in Gay Spirit Vision for whom this was really an important value, but it was not taken up by the whole group. So,
do you remember the process that you used in your brain to decide to go?
well,
As to not, instead of not going?
yeah, because it was somebody, and it wasn't that I didn't trust Joe, I just, I had never been to anything like that. My involvement with gay spirituality had been MCC. And it was positive, but it didn't meet my needs at that moment. MCC didn't. And I had, and I was searching, and doing a lot of questioning about where could I fit in with something. And the first existentialist was the big one. So I know that I ran into Franklin around that time. And Franklin happened. And I don't know, I can't remember the exact circumstances. But he was, of course, very tied in with Pauline and Lanier and Nancy. And also, he lived in the area. Yeah. Or was he already partnered with Charles then? Wow.
Well, this is the 90s, right?
Yeah.
This is the early 90s when you decided to go.
Yeah.
I don't remember when they were together.
Well, okay, so I was involved in like everything. I don't know how I did it.
Let me back up just a minute and ask you something I'm not clear about. Weren't you involved with the Radical Fairy stuff that Franklin and all these other people in Atlanta were involved in back in the late 70s?
No.
Okay, I'm just projecting you back that far.
No.
You were not.
I didn't arrive in Atlanta until August of 1984.
Okay. Well then, all right.
But once I got here, and especially after 1985, I was involved in everything. And I've never said this before in an interview, but as I'm thinking about it, the part of my life that was filled up with church before, I must have filled that void with community stuff.
Do you remember if there were any other MCC people who were involved with Gay Spirit Visions?
No, I don't remember an overlap there.
Okay. All right.
I'll tell you what was helpful back then was that Gay Spirit Vision Atlanta core was willing back then to do events in Atlanta. And so you didn't have to go to the mountain to get whatever we offered. And that was a big plus. Because I remember when we had a one-day, I think it was a spring thing, at the Friends Meeting House on a Saturday. And my performance group, Adoti Muse, performed. Well, that was very simple to make it over to the Friends Meeting House. And to do, and it was one of our first performances. And I remember us having a pretty good time at it.
Okay.
I also want to say out loud that I think the conversation that I think tipped those scales was a conversation with Al Cotton.
Okay.
And let's just say that Al and I took a liking toward each other for a moment. And it wasn't going to become anything big and fancy, but the conversation with Al made it seem more appealing and something I was willing to risk doing.
Okay. Do you happen to remember what it was about the possibility of GSV being something that you would be interested in? What he described about it that appealed to you the most? Or if you can't remember that, that's fine. But I'm just wondering if Al or Franklin or Joe used certain language to make you curious, or at least...
Okay, the scary part for me was the sort of cultish language around it.
Okay.
Oh, we have found the light, or we found the thing, and it's Gay Spirit Vision, and oh, you must have this, and I had grown up with that, and
That just made you more skeptical.
yeah, it did.
Okay.
So something about Al's presentation brought it back down to a human level,
Okay.
and that there was a possibility it could work, and that it was all right to take the chance.
Okay.
And also, this is at the height of the epidemic in Atlanta. And I am struggling to do what my friends in other major urban areas are doing around prevention and education and awareness. And I'm also doing it part-time while I'm doing these survival jobs. And the majority of Black Atlanta doesn't want to be bothered.
Okay, and you're talking early 90s.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so for me, having a place where all of me is going to be affirmed, wow, that was like amazing. And where Christianity is not at the fulcrum of it in that moment, because I was still very angry at the church, the Black church in particular, but the church in general, because of their response to HIV.
Okay. Let me go back for just a second to the Adoti Muse part. you said that was going on around that time. You were already involved in Adobe Muse.
Yes.
Was there ever a possibility of any of the other guys from Adobe Muse going with you to GSD or not?
I think that had there been something done deliberately to translate it for black gay men, they'd have done it, I think.
Okay.
But as it was a white gay thing.
Yeah.
And no, they weren't.
Okay.
They didn't mind going over to the Friends Meeting House and being, part of a discussion. I think Malik got a lot out of it and even participated in some of our online stuff. But I couldn't ever see both of them going up to the mountain for a whole weekend at the price that it was at the time, to be less than 10% of the population.
Okay. What year was the first conference you went to? Do you happen to know?
That's what...
It's okay if you don't know, because it's hard to remember, but...
Okay, Adobe Muse didn't start till 96, 97?
So this is the late 90s then, that you went to your first conference?
No, I went to my conferences before I got Adobe Muse.
Oh,
there.
okay. Adobe Muse did their performance at the Quaker House after you went to the first conference.
Yeah, I had gone to my first conference. I might have already been on the organizing committee, actually.
Okay.
Because once I got involved, I was involved.
Okay. And at the time you went to the first thing, you were living with Joe? Or
I
not?
believe so.
Okay. And you were not in a relationship at that time? I mean, one of the things you mentioned before?
There might have been some overlap. I don't know.
Okay, now here's the really hard part in terms of people's memories. A lot of people cannot separate out their first conference from all the other ones that they went to. I don't know how many you went to, but
several.
If you can isolate the first conference and try to take your brain back to that one, could you talk about what that was like? Like, how did you get there? What do you remember at the beginning of it? What was the first thing?
Oh God, they're all smushed together.
Did you drive up by yourself?
No, because I didn't drive, so that we know.
All right.
So I had to ride with somebody, but I had to ride with somebody everywhere I went.
Okay.
And actually, that's part of what made me a gay activist.
Oh.
Was because I rode with people, so I got to the meeting before the meeting and the meeting after the meeting, and so I got to be really engaged with people.
Yeah.
Because I rode along.
Mm-hmm. So it could have been Al, it could have been Joe, it could have been anybody, probably. I mean, it's not that important, but a lot of people had a lot of anxiety as they approached the weekend after they decided to go, and that's what I was curious about your experience.
No, once
Were
I
you
decided,
dreading it?
once I decide to do something, I do it.
Okay.
And I'm almost certain I had to ride with Joe. I mean, that would make sense.
Okay.
And
what do you remember about that conference? Anything in particular, or is it?
That there was another man there waiting on me to get there, and he didn't even know me.
Okay. What is that about?
That was about his attraction to beautiful black men. I remember connecting very strongly with Andrew Rayner.
Okay.
Wait a minute. What year was David not Sedaris, David
The musician?
yes.
I don't know. Either.
From Canada.
Yeah.
And why am I blanking on his last name?
Cicada or Decada or something like that. Sedeca or something like
Yes. Yes. And
So whatever conference he was at, that was your first
It
conference?
was one of the first, yes.
Okay.
And what was Chris Didio? How did Chris Didio connect with David? Because they started dating. Because every time David came here, he started dating somebody. Whoosh. I shouldn't say that. But
This was an Atlanta person he connected with?
oh yeah, always.
Okay.
And then they would have this long distance thing, and it would be comedy tragic and.
Yeah. Okay, do you remember anything at all about arriving, registering, being assigned your cabin, or any of those logistical
things? For the most part, I was in a cabin, I was in a bunk. I got to sleep in the upper bunk because somebody came and got me out of it. I remember that. I remember thinking that once I was on top of the mountain, that it was breathtakingly beautiful up there. Mm-hmm. And that I really was away from. And I was too ignorant about Southern racism to be that scared around being on a mountaintop in North Carolina. That didn't faze me. Mm-hmm.
And you saw familiar faces, I assume, there.
A few.
The Franklins or whoever.
And it was a small enough group that I knew I could win people over. That wasn't a problem for me.
Okay.
And I really got into the ritual stuff and that, this really is gay spirit vision. Mm-hmm. Like there's all that going on here.
Were some of the rituals novel to you, or?
Very novel.
Okay.
Because I wasn't familiar with Native American spirituality, mm-hmm. nor pagan stuff that was earth-centered. Mm-hmm. All of that was new to me.
And was it new in an appealing way or an
Very
intimidating
much so.
way? It was, you like...
Yeah, because I had... Well, my Christian upbringing included National Baptist, Lutheran, Catholic, conservative Christian, Episcopal...
and whatever MCC was.
MCC, yeah. So I floated through a whole lot of kinds of Christianity, and smells and bells to people shouting, to folks never shouting, to folks sitting there quietly for 50-point-something minutes and leaving. Yeah. The whole thing, and so ritual didn't scare me, and that it was ritual that we came up with, and that we were doing to affirm who we were, was really powerful for me.
Okay. And
and I knew that I was part Native American. And so I think I was desperately seeking something that would maybe connect me there. Mm-hmm. Because that's a grandmother who passed when I was 3 months old.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Was it a lot different than you had expected? If you had put into your brain what you thought it was going to be like, was it different than that? Was it similar to what you expected?
It was different than anything else I've been to that was called a conference.
Okay. Were the small groups part of it?
Yes.
Then? And you were in one?
And my small group was pretty good.
Okay.
My experience in small groups at the mountain has been very good. I haven't had the nightmare small group. Okay. And that's on both sides, participating and facilitating.
Okay. About how often did you go to these conferences? Did you go several years? For years, because I never knew how to just be a part of something. I always had to go backstage. Uh-huh. And so I joined the organizing committee. Okay. Right away, like after the first conference?
Like right away.
Okay.
And I wouldn't have had to stop going if I hadn't joined the organizing committee. Oh, I know what also happened was my intimate circle of friends went, and that was John Brock, his boyfriend, Andy Ditzler, David Brodeur. We all sort of were involved at one point, and that was a good thing, and And then all of us, for whatever reasons, weren't involved as much.
Okay. And you're saying that some people you knew outside of the conference became organizers around the same time you did? Okay.
Yes. Or
And-
later.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you went to conferences kind of regularly for a while?
Yeah. And the conference that I specifically went to was the fall, before we started having all of them.
Okay.
And there was a moment when, before the fall conference, there was a Thursday night or a Thursday night event here, or Wednesday night event here.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved that, because it said that Gay Spirit Vision wasn't just a cult or a clique, that we really were open to somebody in Atlanta connecting with what we were doing. Mm-hmm. And that somebody might not be just another white gay man. Mm-hmm. The decision to not do anything in Atlanta really hurt me. Yeah.
Okay. So now I want to go to the other end of that question and talk about how you stopped going to conferences. Was it because of your disappointment with the community not getting created locally, or you burned out as an organizer, or you didn't want to pay that money anymore, or you got involved in other things? Is there any shorthand way of saying how you decided, I'm not going to go to the conference this year? Or can you not generalize about that?
I'm not gonna pull any punches, but the conference was magical. Mm-hmm. Once you got up to the mountain and once we were doing our thing, it was phenomenal. And we were doing what we intended to do, was help men heal. Mm-hmm. The organizing committee wasn't always as healthy. And I'll admit, I wasn't as mature about some of the things that I do now back then. Mm-hmm. And that there was a sort of quiet lack of enthusiasm around diversifying the attendance at the conference. Mm-hmm. Finally got to me. And I said, these are nice men. They don't want to do this. And one of the key people involved, who was very dear to me, had had enough of me screaming about diversity and said, Duncan, that's your problem, not ours. And that statement was enough. Okay. I said, to hell with it. I said, for me to love these men, I can't come to this anymore, because they're not where I am and I'm not where they are. Mm-hmm. And I can't keep coming up here pretending like I'm satisfied with what I see. And as the Spirit would have it, when I cut Gay Spirit Vision loose, about that time, national gay spiritual organizing was taking off. Care of Patrick McNamara, who had connected with me sort of outside of Gay Spirit Vision, but it turns out that he had been heavily influenced by Gay Spirit Vision. And Martin Escanitas. And he wanted to do a national gay spiritual leadership thing.
Who did?
Patrick McNamara.
Okay.
And so...
Where was he from?
He was from upstate New York at that point.
Okay.
And he was very serious about it and naively passionate about it. Mm-hmm. And so Gay Spirit Culture Summit started. And so I could put the energy that had gone into Gay Spirit Vision, and I suppose that other things in my life had shifted by that point, where I must have been between jobs or in a job where I could devote all this energy to this. And so I think it's about 13 years ago, I got involved in that. And so that introduced me to Eastern Mountain in upstate New York. And lo and behold, gay spiritual leadership and gay spiritual stuff is not so unique to gay spirit visions. And that you run into the same stuff. And you have to be even more strategic or more deliberate and so when Patrick started his, we actually set quotas for people of color who would attend, and also tried to be economically just in doing it. And the other guys were committed to that. And so it was like a breath of fresh air. And there were some guys who were of the, Spirit will send whoever's coming.
These were conferences, sort of GSV.
There was the one.
There was one, okay.
And we met at Garrison on the Hudson. And it was 100 and some guys from all over the country representing all facets of gay spiritual life and spiritual life with gay men who were in leadership. So we had closeted Episcopal priests there. We had closeted clergy who were queer there. And we had all notion of gay spiritual whatevers there. And it was phenomenal. And it also was exhausting and almost impossible to replicate. And we tried. Yeah.
You feel like it was too unwieldy, too broad of a... Why was it hard to replicate, you think?
Funding.
The funding, okay.
There needs to be a whole lot of money behind something like that. Especially if you have an organizer who is committed to doing this as their livelihood.
Yeah.
And that wasn't coming. I mean, it was hard to figure out how to sell this. This is also this is post the worst part of the epidemic, but we were still reeling from it.
Okay.
Just about ready to do something different again.
Okay. All right, well, since this is about the GSV experience, let's shift gears again, go back into your memory and tell us about some of your favorite GSV moments. If you had, I mean, I know there's a lot, but
there are.
Just free associate a little bit.
Spanbauer, Tom, when he came, he was delightful and charming and brilliant and knew how to play with us and challenge us. And such a good writer.
Yeah.
Of course, Andrew Raymer, he's a jewel, crazy as they come. And I love him. I love his daring to play with history and to put us in history.
Okay.
And that freed me to do that same thing. I talk about that we had to have been the queens who decorated the caves. And that's directly from Andrew Raymer. And what I loved about Andrew was I never felt like there was anything messy in my relationship with Andrew. It was like pure friendship and admiration and love. And so much so that I joke that we must have been involved with each other 1,000 years ago.
Do you recall with fondness or something else your small group things? Were those pretty good for you You said earlier.
Yeah, because when I started going to Gay Spirit Vision, we were selling out. And we actually did that 130 something Gay Spirit Vision where the Heart Circle went on for 2 days.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't fair to the men with HIV there, and there needed to be some real boundaries that weren't in place, and yeah. So the small groups were the only way you could really plug in humanely to it. Excuse me, other than other ways that some men found to plug into Gay Spirit Vision.
Okay. Were those some pleasant memories there as well?
Oh yes, of course.
Okay.
Of course.
What pieces of the conference did you enjoy more than some of the others?
I always loved the opening ritual.
Okay.
And that we would take the lid off of creativity and come up with, especially when David Michael Searcy was involved. He's one of my gay kids, so I'm biased, but that David Michael could let his whole pagan self run around at Gay Spirit Vision was beautiful. And he is a beautiful man, and he was living out the whole genderqueer thing long before, we talked about that as a real part of the community, and his spirituality, and he was uber devoted to Gay Spirit Vision. I love the talent show. I mean, that's where I got my kudos, because I got to sing. And Andromeda, who is now known as, oh my goodness, Bob. I mean, I don't know what we would have been without Bob at the piano for all those years. I mean, Bob Strain played, he played talent show after talent show after talent show, hours and hours of piano. And not just, he really set the mood and worked it and just gave, and it was just beautiful. And then I'm getting sad, because I remember Green Man, and I know that Green Man is deceased, or there's a new Green Man coming. I haven't seen the new one. And I'm remembering all the guys who came there as a couple, lost somebody, and then came back. And that Gay Spirit Vision was even safe enough for them to bring the ashes up there. That was part of David Sedaris. David, not Sedaris.
Cicada, I think, or Cicada.
And we're going to have to get this right. Yeah. He is going to kill me. Anyway, he brought his lover's ashes up there.
Wow.
And so did Rob Nixon, when Rob lost his longtime partner, before he got with his now longtime partner, because this is over so many years. And I have to say this, and that the guys couldn't see that this was something that could have been a gift to more men of color.
So that was the big disappointment part.
Yeah.
You mentioned several keynote speakers. Do you remember any others in particular?
When
I don't know if you were there for the James Broughton time. That may have been too early for you.
I have the picture of James Broughton speaking at the First Existentialists.
Okay.
And I met James, and I met Harry Hay because of those Thursday night events. And I took Hal and Kevin up, who were the black massage couple from Philadelphia. And some folks didn't connect with them, but they did some awesome work. And because they were some of our first African-American facilitators at the mountain, we got some people who hadn't ever decided to come to Gay Spirit Vision to come that year. Hal isn't with us anymore. not physically.
What's his name?
Al Carter and Kevin Green.
Al Carter and Kevin Green, right.
I am... Why can't I remember his name? Monty's partner.
John Stowe.
John Stowe. And I borrowed and stole from John for years because he would never let you just sit there. You had to get up and get moving. Yeah. And embodying spirituality and embodying values. And yeah, that was important to me.
Okay. Just an aside here, your herbal name, the sugar glider.
Yeah.
Was that a GSV related thing, or was that
it was influenced my fairy name? I didn't have a fairy name.
Okay.
And I had a drag name, and because of my contact with Harry Hay, I didn't want to use the drag name up there because for me, drag was all sparkles and, sort of, it was a different kind of thing than Gay Spirit Vision. And I quickly understood that the fairy name had some spiritual stuff to it and some other stuff to it. And so when I met this little creature, my neighbor up the street, Bruce, had a son who was a teenager at the time, and he had a sugar glider, and it was a beautiful marsupial, a very tiny one. He looks like he's smaller than a hamster, like a chipmunk, only it's a gliding marsupial.
Oh.
And
this was in Atlanta?
In Atlanta, and I met it, and his pet's name was Kiwi. But when he told me, well, this is a sugar glider, it was like, oh, okay, that's all she wrote, sugar glider. And then he said, they are very sensitive, and I don't have a second one, and so if I don't give him a lot of attention, he's not gonna make it. And I thought, well, that's me. And he's brown and cute, and he can fly of his own volition. And I thought, yes, this works.
Great. I never heard that story.
Yeah.
Funny.
So that's where I got Sugar Glider. And I felt like it was a gift to me.
Do you think you can isolate some of the things that you've incorporated into your life and your being and your values that came directly out of Gay Spirit Visions instead of from somewhere else? Or is it too mushed in with all the other influences and everything?
Well,
Was Gay Spirit Vision a transformative thing for you, or not?
Of course.
Okay. Well, I have to ask.
Yeah, of course it was.
Okay.
I was involved so much. Gay Spirit Vision taught me that I could love a group and walk away from it. And come back when it's the right time. Because my Midwestern stuff says you're just supposed to suffer and stay in there. And I set myself free there. Gay Spirit Vision also affirmed all my femme stuff and my spiritual stuff all together, not separated. My relationship with Harry is directly related to Gay Spirit Vision, even though we met later in other venues. But I knew who Harry Hay was. I want to say on a personal level, but it wasn't, I wasn't his personal friend. But we got to spend time together in the evening, just me and Harry Hay. And that's, not a lot of people can say that. And that's because of the Fairy Circle here in Atlanta and Gay Spirit Vision. And Franklin, that you can work a room full of white gay men from wherever the hell they are and just work them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's Gay Spirit.
Do you have friends and acquaintances in your life now that came through Gay Spirit Visions that you can think of? People
I'm
that
still close to Franklin,
Mm-hmm.
and
I guess I'm thinking about people that you might not know otherwise, because you probably knew Franklin a lot of ways besides Gay Spirit Visions.
yeah.
And you don't have to know who these people are. I just wonder.
Well, that it opened the door to Gay Spirit Culture Summit,
Mm-hmm.
and that name similarity is not accidental either.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those people are now quasi-professional friends, and a couple of them are very dear friends now,
Okay.
who we've worked together in addition to, and that's directly related to Gay Spirit Vision. One of whom was at the celebration for me passing my boards, you know, the Unitarian Universalist Ministerial boards.
Yeah.
Oh, and the other piece was that, like, I put Gay Spirit Vision in my ordination service.
How so?
I asked them to do a circle. Yes, I asked them to draw the circle from the 4 directions, and I asked them to bless people as they came in. And it was to affirm that part of my spirituality, and also to give a space for Gay Spirit Vision to do their thing outside of, stuck up on the mountain somewhere away from everybody. And in the center of Unitarian Universalism, which if we go back to Joe, was how I got there.
Yeah.
And also that my ministry had to have some of that there.
Yeah.
Also because, Terry Allen, our friendship moved directly into Gay Spirit Vision when he became a part of it. We were friends before, but that became a central part. I was at an event the August before I started seminary, and it was a potluck. And Terry said, in my tradition, we give the right hand of fellowship to people who are going into ministry. And he said, I think Gay Spirit Vision should give the right hand of fellowship to Duncan. Well, Terry left out a piece of that. You give the right hand of fellowship in the Baptist tradition when you're ordaining somebody. Not just to send them off into ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Gay Spirit Vision ordained me before I went into seminary.
Nice.
It was kind of accidental, but, you know, what isn't in Gay Spirit Vision? Craig Cook, too, yeah. I knew Craig through both of his relationships in Gay Spirit Vision.
Okay.
And how he would, you know, create those things and all that art and backdrop and the altars and all that.
I want to go back to the part about your being in the organizing committee for however long that lasted. Apart from the chronic indifference or resistance or whatever you encountered with the diversity thing, do you what other things did you remember about that process? Were there new things about the process? Were there good things about the process?
I'd never been in something that was organized in that way. And there were sort of some sacred cows back then that we just couldn't touch, and I didn't challenge them. I was challenging the big picture.
Yeah.
Which, you know, now when I think about it, I don't want to let the guys off the hook because Gay Spirit Vision happens in the South.
Well, every organization is imperfect.
Yes,
So
but
that's part of
but
what
to
we want
tout that you're promoting gay spirituality, and you're not willing to go into some of the nitty gritty
Yeah.
of what keeps us stuck or has us in some really painful places. It was really hard, but I also got, and this was, and it's still hard for, I'm having a hard time talking about it, because it wasn't my experience, that there are these white gay men in the South, no, gay men in the South, regardless of what skin they're in, who are just crawling through their lives trying to be gay.
Mm-hmm.
And that if they could make it to the top of the mountain was phenomenal. And I didn't get that back then. I didn't get how much of a struggle that was. Because I came out so young. Mm-hmm. I came out in high school. And by the time I got to Gay Spirit Vision, I'd already had serious relationships, unserious relationships. You know, some things that we wouldn't dare call relationships. So I didn't get the struggle that some of the men had, and why diversifying that space would have unhinged it for so many of them. Mm. And I get that now.
I think
it was all they could do to get up to the top of the mountain and say they're queer.
Okay.
If they got up to the top of the mountain and half that crowd had been black, they'd have lost their minds.
Okay. That's what I thought you were saying.
Yes, I'll say it out loud.
Okay.
Or half the crowd was Latino. They wouldn't have known what to do.
Uh-huh.
And they couldn't have plugged in as easily as they did.
So it would made it easier for a certain group.
Yes.
To be rescued.
Yes, and they had some real gatekeepers.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
There's a coda to that. And I don't want to get lost in that part of it, because of course that's where I'm emotionally charged. But the coda is that when I was thinking about coming back, just to look around, because I didn't want the hypocrisy of doing national gay spiritual work, and I won't even go to the local.
Oh, okay.
I thought that's hypocritical. And I never wanted to think of myself as somebody who thinks I'm too good for.
Okay.
That wasn't where I was coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And so, at the point that I was considering coming back, as just a participant, and I was going to keep my mouth shut, yeah, sure. Yeah. But I thought I was. They invited me back as a paid facilitator. And it was the year that Andrew and the Latino guy. So essentially it was a black guy, a Latino guy, and a Jewish guy facilitating Gay Spirit Vision. And I was like, whoa, something has shifted. Because that would not have happened before. And they were ready. And it was the year we were doing this thing about being 18, because the conference was 18 years old. And we played in some really scary stuff, because I did age regression on them and took them back to being 18. And it was phenomenal about how the age cohorts coped with having been 18. And there was an age cohort there that was old enough that being 18 did not involve the word gay because it wasn't used. Mm-hmm. And homosexual wasn't used either. They didn't have the words we have when they were 18. And there was another cohort that was, one of them I think was barely 18.
Yeah.
And they were so young that they were like, well, what's the big deal? What was that?
Right. Wow.
Yeah. So that experience of coming back at that particular right time, and frankly in the right position too, was amazing. And I got so much good stuff from the guys for being willing to come and do what I did.
And that was the last time you were there?
No, I've been back since.
Okay. All right. So how do you decide to go or not go nowadays? Does it have to do with everything
Scheduling
else?
is a big one.
Scheduling?
Because I'm in ministry, and
Did you ever go to a conference besides the fall one?
yes,
Yeah.
I have not done winter. I'm not doing winter of the month.
Okay.
I've done spring, and that was interesting because it was smaller, and it really reminded me of the intimacy of some of the other earlier fall conferences before we busted the gates. Yeah.
Interesting. Do you know a guy from Oakhurst Baptist Church named Laney?
Lanny Peters.
Yeah.
Lanny Peters factors in my call story.
Well, is it all connected through Gay Spirit Visions, or is that a totally different?
Lanny's heterosexual.
Okay.
And he was very close to Terry's ex who passed away, Jack Smith. I don't know about that connection.
Okay. I'm just curious.
Lenny's important to me, and we've worked together since, and Oakhurst even had me in the pulpit, which was amazing to be in a Baptist pulpit and feel like it was just fun. I never thought that would happen.
You never thought that would happen?
I never thought that would happen.
Okay. Do you remember ever encouraging somebody to go to Gay Spirit Visions?
Oh, yeah.
You know, individual people that
Yeah.
you thought were ready for that or needed that or whatever. What kind of advice would you give to somebody about how to prepare for a conference or what to expect or whatever? What is the kind of thing how would you describe this being a good thing for somebody these days? Or would you? Or would it depend on that person's situation?
The person needs to be able to, of course, have the time and the resources to go.
Yeah.
Now, there are scholarships, which is helpful. I wouldn't be hesitant about sending somebody. I would tell them that the mountain is comfortable, but it's not a Holiday Inn. Or at least most of it is not a Holiday Inn. If you can get them the lodge, I guess that's pretty close. That it really is Gay Spirit Vision. So be ready to look at all of that, not just one part of it. If they were heavily identified as Christian, I would get them ready to see that shifted.
Okay.
And interesting that some of my friends who don't go because they thought the Christians were taking over Gay Spirit Vision.
Really?
Yes.
You think that was based on
paranoia.
information? Okay. Well, that's the first.
And it's also based in denial. Like I'm sorry, the Christian church is held up by a whole lot of queer pillars. And that we would have our own place to be gay and spiritual and not have gay Christians is kind of silly to think that would happen. And really unfair. And kind of naive.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll leave that there.
There are many dozens of people that aren't alive anymore that were at these conferences, and if you're willing to do this, if you would go down this list of names and just pause at the places that you have memories and describe those memories. We're trying to put together oral little mini histories of people who are remembered.
Why wasn't I ready for this? I was sitting here having a moment. You haven't even handed me the list.
Well, I think I understand.
Can I have a break before we do that?
Yes. So, what we're not expecting you to do is to have a memory about any of these people or anybody in particular, but because they cannot be here to tell us their story, we want to use the back door and use your memory of them to kind of create an idea of who were these people that you remember and why did you remember them, or what is one thing you remember about them, whether it was from afar or because you knew them, or just something anything that's associated with these people. And I want you to take as much time. You can go through it in any order, front to back or back to front, but I don't want to rush you through this list. It's a long list, and I don't want to exhaust you either. So you just pick the first one that starts the memory. And it can be a superficial memory. It doesn't have to be some profound thing.
I'll start with Raven because he was alive when I first got there. And he was one of the founders. And died early.
Yes.
And not from HIV.
1993.
Yeah, from murder. And yeah. In March of '92, Venus Landon was murdered. And she was co-chair with me of the African American Lesbian Gay Alliance.
I didn't know that you had 2 murders in a single year. People you knew. It's terrible.
And yeah.
So what kind of person was Raven for you?
I remember Raven as a fair-skinned white man with dark hair. So the Raven thing fit him. And he had a kind of prominent brow, and in very much sort of a mystical way, he was kind of sexy. I also remember him as sort of a sidekick to Franklin's more cuddly, friendly,
Southern.
Yeah, well, Southern and also Franklin just has that you just know it'll be all right to hug him. I wasn't sure whether it would be all right to hug Raven. And Raven had the fairy thing down pretty packed. And I don't remember a whole lot about Raven at the mountain, though he had to have been there. Yeah. And Raven's death was a thing in gay spirit fiction. Like we had to deal with that. His death was a theme. Other people's passing we had to cope with, but Raven's death was like, oh my God, like, can we go on without?
Were you on the organizing part of GSV when that happened? Do you remember, or was that a different time? I mean, was he suddenly
I think
not
it was
there?
shortly after that.
Okay.
I think so. Because I don't think I knew Raven well enough to have been in it, but I witnessed it and could feel the shift.
Okay.
I knew Lou. I loved his smile. He was very sweet to me. Roger Weinstein was a friend and very, very close to Judge Gansey. And Roger and I were friendly to each other and very respectful of each other, but we didn't. It didn't click in that way.
Yeah.
But I loved and cared for the people that were around Roger too. So it was like, you know, he was sort of in the circle.
Yeah. Was he tall or short? Or,
yeah, he was a little taller than me.
Mm-hmm.
Athletic looking, as I remember, and cute. Yeah.
Okay.
And longer hair.
Okay.
Had his own sort of thing. He was very much his own person.
Mm-hmm.
King Thaxton and I were very close.
Did you know him before GSV?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
And we had some pretty tough arguments.
Y'all were both on the organizing
Yeah.
part of it? Mm-hmm.
And of course, King's way of living and my way of doing things were very different. And King was a Thaxton from, I think, was it Tennessee or King's family was comfortable. And King lived the life of a Southern artist, and he was a part of Taboo, and he was in his own sort of institution here. And I still miss the solstice party at King's house. And King's surviving partner, Jonathan, and I became close too. King's art influenced how Gay Spirit Vision grew and how it appeared. We became more professional looking because of King.
That's true.
John Stowe and I...
Had you known him before GSV?
No.
Okay.
John and I were two smaller men with prominent derrieres.
Okay.
And at some point we sort of became spiritual brothers in some exercise or something. And he was sort of watching out for me. And I always felt cared for by John. And like he was being patient with my impatience. And I got to know Monty, John's partner, through John. And like I said, I still borrow his stuff. Because at some point I probably have asked the groups that I facilitate or whatever I'm doing to get up and get moving, or to just get the energy moving, and it's directly related to watching John work. And I miss him.
What did he look like?
We looked at each other eye to eye. So he was shorter. He was attractive. He had I can't remember what color eyes. He was a very fit man. Not big and bulky, but like yoga fit.
Yeah.
And his body wasn't skinny. It was smaller, muscular. And when I heard that John could pick up his mother-in-law and take her upstairs, carry her up the stairs, I wasn't surprised. I was surprised he would do it, but not surprised that he could do it.
Yeah.
And he was also a therapist, so he knew how to let folks have their space and not get too excited about it like I would.
Mm-hmm.
He also knew how to have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And I really admired his relationship with Monty. They seemed very well paired. And I had a significant role in John's goodbye service.
Mm-hmm.
And I was honored to do that. Philip Rush met Wendell, who he dated for a while, a significant amount of time, here at my house. And Philip Rush and I knew each other from Philip's other world with the Atlanta Community Foundation, or what is now the Atlanta Foundation, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And we were constantly teasing each other, teaching each other stuff. We had a really good friend. I could be at Georgia State and think, I'm going to go by and say hi to Philip. And he would welcome me in, and I would try not to stay too long, but it was on that basis.
Mm-hmm. Did he teach there?
No,
Or
he was, the Community Foundation was in the Hurt building,
Yeah.
which is now surrounded by Georgia State.
Okay.
So essentially, now it's on campus. It was across the line for many years.
Okay. What did he look like? I never met Philip Rush.
He was a big man.
Really?
And he sort of built like Randall.
Uh-huh.
And he started out with long hair and he cut it. And extremely charming because he was well bred and he was from money.
Uh-huh.
And I met his mother, and she was a Southern Dom. Yeah. She put on her good stuff for us. She had the stole, dripping with jewels, hair done, the whole thing.
And he came to Gay Spirit Visions for a while.
Yeah.
Okay. I missed those years, I suppose. Not having
he was a very brilliant man. And the reason we have the Rush Center is because of him. Because he saw what happened with our other efforts to have space in the community, and he knew what it would take. Philip and I loved each other as friends, and he adored David. And Cassandra. Wow. I didn't have a lot of one-on-one with Cassandra.
But you still have memories of him.
Oh, very much so. Cassandra was scary at times. When Cassandra was in that thing, that world she would go into. But Cassandra never came up to the mountain without changing the space.
It's true.
That whole thing about decorating the whole volleyball court and the approach up the mountain was Cassandra. So here was this person who was very hard to get into, and who went from being dumpy and kind of not interesting to losing all that weight, to going on meds when she was incarcerated, and kind of coming out like there was more there then for a moment. Yeah.
I remember going up there one time and there were all these things hanging from the
Yes.
trees, and I was like,
Always.
I never thought about this. This is so creative.
Exactly.
It was such a great welcome.
Yes, and I have been to the mountain for many events, and to have gone up there for Gay Spirit Vision only for so long, And now I'm a Unitarian minister, so I got to go up there for this and for that.
Oh.
And to go up the mountain and to walk by the volleyball court and there's nothing hanging.
Yeah.
It's like, why am I here? You know, like, this isn't gay spirit vision.
It was amazing to me that he gave so much.
Yes.
Even though it was hard to know whether he was getting anything because he was so closed, you know, but I hope he felt appreciated because, man, that was...
Yeah, and I watched the relationship between Cassandra and some other pretty important folks like Gary Kaufman and they knew Cassandra from the fairy circles and other places, so they knew when it was getting rough, or, yeah. Is this Rocco?
Mm-hmm.
From Running Water, Rocco?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that.
Oh dear. This is a few years ago.
All I knew is that he was strikingly attractive.
Yes.
Taller than me and looked like he walked out of a magazine.
Mm-hmm.
Only sort of a country magazine. And that he was so solid within himself.
Mm-hmm.
I have to show you something.
Okay. What is
I
it?
have a picture of Rocco and Peter, and they're both nude,
Yeah.
and they're both just standing beside each other, and Peter has this perfect pose, with a leg out, sort of almost in a ballet stance,
Yeah.
and Rocco is just standing there like a solid, and Peter looks so delicate next to him.
Yeah.
And the two together look perfect. And the picture is slightly out of focus, and they're outdoors, and it's so mystical.
Wow.
And it's sat in my bathroom downstairs forever. I don't know where I gotta go find that picture now.
I hope you'll donate that to the archive someday.
Knowing that Rocco and Peter helped form the Foundation for Gay Spirit Vision helped me.
Oh.
Because they were so kind and so sweet, and lived what they believed about this.
Yeah.
Not just once a year, but they, lived on the land. Oh, Crazy Al. I think Crazy Al did healing stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I saw him around Atlanta sometimes. And just lived forever, I think. Was he in his 80s or 90s?
I think in his 90s.
Yeah.
He lived out on Flat Shoals Road for a while in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I loved the other thing from Gay Spirit Vision is this intergenerational thing. That all the gay men there weren't 20-something or 30-something. They went up into the ages. Beyond me and now below me. And I appreciated that. And Crazy Al's part of that. I didn't play with Crazy Al because I thought the crazy part was real. Ramon Noria and I were personal friends.
Really?
And
I never met him, so tell me about him.
A Spanish heartthrob. More attractive than Desi Arnaz, certainly. More charming, far more charming. And he had a wall of music that would have started here and gone beyond this bookcase.
Was he a musician?
No, this was all CDs.
Oh, okay.
Well, he may have been a musician. I don't know that
He was
part
a
of his
lighting
life.
guy.
He was a lighting guy, and he did the sconces at the what is now Symphony Hall and the Alliance Theater, and they're fake. The light comes down; it doesn't go up, but it looks like it's going up, because he was that smart. And sexy, and I appreciated his friendship with Terry. And Ramon and I were friends. And I loved going to potluck at his house. It was so comfortable and so warm. Ramon was maybe a couple of inches taller than me. And just comfortably masculine.
Yeah.
Not that machismo thing or something put on, it was just him. Mm-hmm. And I think Ramon was also confident in himself because he's a very successful person. Mm-hmm.
Would you say he was sweet? Or I mean, I wish I had known him. I didn't know.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But yes, but not in a syrupy kind of way or yeah, very sweet. And obviously generous. I mean, we went to his home. And I think he gave to the mountain that light fixture, I think, is his design. Yeah.
Take your time.
Bill Manili and I dated for a little bit.
Really?
Yeah, just for a little bit. It didn't work. And it sweetly didn't work. It wasn't bad, it just didn't work. And I don't think Bill was ready to date somebody who wasn't positive. And so I just loved his sweetness. Now Bill was sweet. And those glasses that made his eyes look like they were huge full moons.
Blue eyes.
Yes, blue.
Very blue.
You could get lost in them.
Yeah. I did.
Okay.
Not the only one.
Bill and I had a date on a Sunday afternoon. And he was gonna pick me up and take me to the Georgia mountains to see the leaves. And I had been working and doing my thing, and I got in the truck and we headed off to the mountains, and I fall asleep in moving vehicles very quickly. So I was out, on the way up there. And when I woke up, we were coming back to Atlanta. And I said, wait a minute, where are we? This doesn't look like we're headed up to the mountain. He said, we made it, and the leaves weren't that pretty, and so I thought we should just come on home. He was that kind. And Bill was connected to John and Carl, who I knew from Black and White Men Together, and they were very close, and they took care of Bill in his last days. And they also were my landlords. And so me and Bill had a lot of connections. Yeah. And he was so intelligent. And that crazy Groundhog Day party.
That's right.
And I helped make the Groundhog Day cookies one year. I miss Bill. I have his punch bowl. It's not really a punch bowl, it's actually a gift from the library to him. I think after his 20 years of service or something, it's a silver bowl, but it actually works for punch. Leon Lashner and I knew each other, respected each other, but we never really connected. I actually had Leon do a session with me that scared the bejesus out of me, because I wasn't ready to deal with daddy stuff yet. I thought Leon was hot, but I was very surprised when we lost him. Larry Jackson and I were like sisters. We weren't real tight, but when we were at the mountain, we were real tight. And when he was dating Brad, that was when we got closer. And then he was doing the thing in North Carolina, the Gay Spirit Vision thing there. And I think I have the right person, Larry Jackson.
I didn't know him, so.
I think so. And
Are you talking about Brad Pitt?
yeah.
Uh-huh.
And Larry was into the nudist thing, and so we had a chapter of Gay Spirit Vision where clothing was optional.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just so funny because, you know, we were so uptight here,
Yeah.
and they were so free up there. And I loved it. Martin Escanitis. Where shall I begin?
Did you say you knew him way before Gay Spirit Visions?
Yeah, through Joe.
Through Joe.
Because he and Joe were doing AIDS work, and I thought Martin was one of the most gorgeous men on the planet. And
Was he in BWMT?
no.
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 He was an AIDS worker person.
And he was a therapist.
A therapist, okay.
And to see Martin fall off the wagon and then fall into addiction was hard.
Mm-hmm.
But then to have him come back and own his place as an elder was nice. It was like, oh, okay. Okay, yeah. And Martin's complicated. Because, you know, he's a big old gay man with all sorts of stuff going on. He loved me. He loved David. We had him here for dinner a couple of times. The length of our friendship meant that we had gone through a lot of stuff together.
Mm-hmm. Were y'all on the organizing committee at the
Yes.
same time? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I helped do Martin's service.
Mm-hmm.
So not only did Gay Spirit Vision help me grasp my ministry, but once I had a grasp of my ministry, because we were losing people, I had a place to practice.
Mm-hmm.
Not practice like rehearse, but
Be of help.
be of help.
Yeah.
And of service, I hope. That was hard.
Mm-hmm. Did you know that other group that he was so involved with?
No, I did not. I didn't know a thing about them until he passed.
Okay.
Which wasn't surprising.
Uh-huh.
It was not surprising.
Yeah, that was new to me too.
Martin was a little bit in control. If I can say that polite.
Yeah.
And don't you start nothing in here. Oh, and I got to meet his brother, who is really a wonderful man.
Oh.
And I knew his brother from before, who was also gay. And I hope that I was of service to them when he lost Martin.
Mm.
You have Kevin Green written down.
Yeah, because you mentioned him.
He's not deceased.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said
Hal is.
Hal is.
And Hal is on the list.
Okay, I'll take him off the list.
Yeah, please take him
Very
off the
happily.
list.
Well, tell me about Hal,
Oh, Hal was gorgeous.
since I did not know
Hal
him.
was shorter than me, but he was a muscle man.
Uh-huh.
And dark skinned, and I knew Hal when he was with Fred, who is now Kamal, and Kamal lives in Europe with his partner, and Kevin and I knew each other from AIDS work, and so when Kevin and Hal got together, it was like, oh, okay, I sort of get this. Because they both were ready to do the next healthy living spiritual thing together. And they both, I think Kevin had before, but I'm not sure that that's the truth, so I won't go into the origin, but they were part of Body Electric together. And there aren't that many black gay men who were involved in Body Electric.
Did you know Al that way, or did you know Al some other way, Al Cotton? You mentioned Al earlier.
Yes.
Were you ever in the Body Electric
Yes,
stream?
I did Body Electric.
Okay.
But I knew Al before I
okay,
did Body
okay.
Electric.
Did Al get you into Body Electric?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Al and I worked out our own friendship.
Okay. All right. Pre-Body Electric.
Yes.
And pre-GSV.
Al and I didn't need Body Electric.
I see. Okay.
Shauna, please, nothing but admiration. I'll move on and come back. If John Clark is a tall blonde from Canada,
I don't know him.
I think if that's who he is, he was very sweet to me. James Broughton, of course, I mean, he's an icon. And I loved his energy. I love his story. And if you go in my bathroom, he's in my bathroom.
I noticed that, yeah.
Ode to Joy is hanging over the toilet. One of my friends, and I named John Brock, or Pan, thought that I was way too attracted to depressed men. And I think part of my thing about putting Ode to Joy on the wall was countering some of that, my bent toward the blue. And that, you know, when you go in the bathroom, there's something else there.
Interesting.
Other than just a toilet. Malcolm Boyd, and now also Malcolm's partner.
Right. That's true. I don't know if did he ever come to the Gay Spirit Visions? He did?
He came with Malcolm.
Okay.
And they were adorable.
Yeah. I didn't go.
Oh, and we were all about the same height. That's kind of nice. Because I always had this thing about big men, but it was nice to meet, you know, really strong. And Malcolm's Are You Running With Me, Jesus? And that Malcolm's is, all of that influences my husband's coming out story.
Okay.
And I didn't know that. And so I was really happy to have met them. And then me and David got together, and then to know that their work helped him. And I really appreciated the respect and love they had for each other in their May December relationship. Because Malcolm was what, like 15 years older than his partner?
He was older. I don't know how many.
I think it was significant.
Yeah.
Ivan Bailey, I knew care of the Franklin Abbott Circle. And the King Thaxton Circle, I think, because he was an artist. And this is one of those missed opportunities, because I asked Ivan if I could go to his studio when I was doing the Artist's Way at work as part of one of my artist visits, and Ivan said, sure, Duncan, anytime, and I never made it.
Didn't he live up north somewhere?
Well, he had moved up north, but he had a studio in town.
Oh, he did. Okay. He was the ironworker person.
Yes, and short. And he sort of looked like an iron worker.
Hmm.
I mean, sort of. He wasn't big and stocky. He was more short and, kind of built. Malcolm's Gay Spirit Vision presentation was one of the best. I skipped over Harry Hay. I don't know how that happened. I think we owe a debt of gratitude to Harry. Because before it was all right to say any of this, he was saying. Mm-hmm. And he had sense enough that when his group became too conservative to leave it and start something else.
Yeah, that's true.
I think some of us hang in places too long. It's all right to leave. Mm-hmm. And go do something else important. So we have two very big, important cultural things that happen in queer life, and they happen because of Harry Hay. And he kissed me. Yes. Okay, so he kissed 1,000 other men too.
Well,
he kissed me.
As well.
Yes. Oh, and my Harry Hay story was crazy. Because they were having something at Ravens. I met Harry at Ravens.
Oh, okay.
Wow. And I knew the fairy thing, right? Mm-hmm. But I knew the drag thing, and I didn't want to come in drag. But I wanted to be respectful of the fairy thing.
Yeah.
But I wasn't a fairy. Yeah. So I wore a veil.
Oh.
So I had this black sheer, it was really a head wrap, but they didn't know. But, and it went like this, and I thought that would make me less conspicuous. Well, it went the other way.
Yeah.
Because when you put on a veil and you leave your eyes out, all the attention is here. Mm-hmm. And Harry and I had one of those locked eye things, and he just adored it. Uh-huh. And that was when I had my moment with Harry Hay. And he was so sweet. And the next time I saw Harry, he was one of our volunteer teachers at the New Pacific Academy in San Francisco. And I got to witness young people not appreciate him, and young feminists essentially come for Harry in a way that was so disrespectful. Wow. Because he called them honey. Oh. And they had been taught in their feminist classes that was disrespectful to women. And I was like, this is Harry Hay. Can we please have some grace in here? That really pissed me off. Because I'm like, the reason you had your damn feminist class is because of Harry Hay.
I see. So it's ironic.
Yes. So maybe you could give him some space as an older gay man.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. When was the Pacifica?
New Pacific Academy?
For you?
The month of June 1991.
Before GSV, then? Before you started coming to GSV, you were out there. You met Harry there first?
No. Oh, you know what? I'm using the wrong dates.
Okay. 2001?
No, it was 91 was when I was in New Pacific Academy, but I'd already met Harry. Okay. I did all that stuff in the late 80s.
Oh, okay. So you started...
I wasn't at the first one.
Okay.
And I certainly never went to Running Water.
Okay, but Harry was in the first 1, 2, or 3, or 4. So
yeah.
You came early on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was earlier in the process than I admit.
Okay. Okay.
But that helps when you don't tell the truth about your age.
All right. Okay. Anybody else on that list? And if you have any memory...
Wait a minute. Roldan Smith was Indian, right?
I don't know that person myself. I don't know.
I don't want to know that. And David Witt and I were friends.
Was he an Atlanta person?
No, he was in Charlotte, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't become close to David Witt's partner until after David passed.
Mm-hmm.
David was strong, a powerful man.
I didn't know him.
Yeah. He liked powerful men too. Because his boyfriend's a big old man.
Mm.
One of them big old bearded North Carolina man.
Okay.
Shauna.
Yes, Shauna. Did
Can,
you know
Can
him
I go there? Yes.
before Gay Spirit Visions?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
I admired that Shauna was willing to come to Gay Spirit Vision and not just play along, but be authentically who she was with us. And say, I'm not just in a skirt for fun. These are my skirts.
Mm-hmm.
I wear these. And Shauna is who I am. And I appreciated that Gay Spirit Vision had grown up enough to make the space. And that he and Craig had, or she and Craig had that phenomenal love affair.
Mm-hmm.
And that it ended so tragically is like, really?
Yeah.
If I wrote a play with that plot line, nobody would believe it.
True.
Okay, so for the sake of the people listening to this tape 100 years from now, for some English class, I guess.
History.
Craig Ali, Cook, and Shauna got together, lived together after realizing that they had a really good relationship. And we were both very happy. And they got married in New York because it wasn't legal here yet. And they flew to New York on Friday or on Thursday or Friday. Got married in New York on Saturday. Flew back here on Sunday. And at some point, Monday morning,
or Sunday night or something,
Shauna got up to make coffee and died. And Craig didn't know it until he got up and went in the kitchen and found his brand new spouse deceased. They weren't married 2 days, officially. No, but if I wrote that in a story, nobody would. The audience would be mad.
Yeah. No.
What are you doing? How dare you manipulate us like this?
Right.
And Craig and I had been friends, and so it was so hard to see him go through that. Mm-hmm. And I think he's just now walking on solid ground again. 3 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like 3 years ago. It was, it sent shockwaves through Gay Spirit Vision because Shauna was only 49, if that,
And had just done a really interesting.
Yes, had just
talk.
done a presentation at Gay Spirit Vision.
Right. Which was very moving to everyone, apparently, because everybody remembers it when we interviewed them. They all remember his thing in particular.
I wasn't at that one.
I wasn't either. Apparently, it was something.
So, if somebody asks you to do something and you can do it, you should do it. Because you don't know.
Okay. Well, thank you for going through that minefield. What did you think we were going to ask you about GSV that we didn't? Or what would you like to say that you haven't said? Or anything else that before we turn off the camera and the recorder? We want to be sure that you, whatever intentions you had or thoughts you had that you wanted to be sure that you mentioned, get mentioned. And we're at the end of our questions, so you don't have to have anything, but this is your chance to.
I'm not going to miss the chance. But,
And if you want to say anything about what you've observed of how the organization has morphed over the years for good or bad, we'd love to hear that part too, because you're a good analyzer and you've seen a lot of the history of GSV.
Yeah. GSV has had to change over the years because it was born out of a different gay community. And then immediately after it was born, we were in the midst of the epidemic. And the ways it helped and saved lives or souls had to change. Because we're not in any way that same group of people. Mm-hmm. And having to change a small group of volunteers who do such a phenomenal job has been hard. And I don't ever want to make light of that. And that after 26 years, it is still going up to the mountain and doing, life-changing work with gay men, many of whom had never thought about doing any of this. They either left the church or avoided the church or left whatever thing they were in because it wasn't safe. I think it's phenomenal. It is not perfect by any means. It's a human endeavor. And I want to say for the record, that there was a space for a crazy black queen to come and do my thing. And it was reciprocal. And I was probably not hated, but certainly disliked. And I didn't give a shit. And there were other times when I was celebrated and put on pedestals that nobody belongs on. And I was loved and taken care of too. All of that in Gay Spirit Vision. Mm-hmm. And so, I wish things had been different, but like I said, it's still around. Mm-hmm. And still doing phenomenal work. And it's had to grow up and had to do things differently, and the mountain has changed. It better had from when we first went up there. Mm-hmm. But and I'm proud of that. I'm now a part of the institution that gave the home to Gay Spirit Vision. Mm-hmm. Now I want them to broaden their sense of home and come back to the city. I'd love for them to do that. Or maybe I can do that. Maybe there's some part of my new congregation that can do some of that work.
What has been your involvement with the board? Do you go to the board meetings up there?
Of Gay Spirit Vision?
No, of the Unitarian, whoever controls that place.
Oh, the mountain is self-controlled,
Okay.
and they have their own board.
Yeah.
And no, I'm not on
Okay.
the board of the mountain.
Okay. You go there for other kinds of
I go
events.
there for other kinds of things because as a Unitarian Universalist minister in the South,
Yeah.
it's our retreat site.
Do
It's
you
one of them.
do you get the impression that the other people who use that for other purposes are aware of Gay Spirit Visions being part of a bunch of people who meet there, or
Sometimes.
is it some people are?
Some people are.
Yeah.
But you know, it is a Unitarian Universalist thing.
And yes.
Yes.
And therefore.
And therefore, you know, they own it in their own way.
Yeah. Okay.
And just like there are other groups that have a long history with the mountain, none as profound as Gay Spirit Vision, by the way.
Really. Okay.
But yeah. So it's weird to be a part of both sides of that now.
Interesting. Okay. Well, Duncan, thank you so much. It's been something we wanted to do a long time, and so thanks for making the space.
Oh, yeah, I have to say something.
Oh, good.
Okay, I
I
saw
thought of something. Yeah.
something else. Somebody who is like a brother to me, and this part I'll leave anonymous because I didn't get his permission to do this. But at a very low point, and he was not at the bottom, but he was trying to crawl his way back up. And it was his idea. He said, Duncan, I want to go back to Gay Spirit Vision. I want you to be my roommate. And we did. And the jolt that helped get him moving again happened at the Gay Spirit Vision.
Wow.
I saw it happen. And I'm gonna be honest, it wasn't just the gay spiritual thing, it was the gay thing too. There were some men who were very happy to help him out with the jolt. But all of that's part of who we are.
Yeah.
And I was more than happy to be up there with him.
Oh, that's a wonderful thing to see.
Yeah. And if that's the only thing that happens, let it keep going for another 100 years. Because we still need it. God, we still need it. We need 6 more Gay Spirit Visions.
It's interesting that you say that, because one thing that we've heard from other people is not the opposite of that, but they are wondering whether Gay Spirit Visions is useful as it used to be, necessary like it used to be, and you're the first person to
Those are
offer
old
this
queens
idea.
who don't want to accept that they're old.
Well, I don't. Why are you saying that? It's not
Because-
necessarily old people who are saying.
Well, okay, it's that, I had an experience when I was. Well, you can't have that now. You have to have the experience you have now.
Yeah.
And live in the relevance of that now.
Yeah.
And why can't it be something wonderful for the men who are that age that you were now?
Yeah. Okay.
We have a very selfish community. And a very sort of,
People aren't thinking of how they could be of service to some other generation. of
no,
people.
they're not.
Okay.
Not typically.
Mhm.
Not typically. And it is past time for gay men to own that. But see, we got to be happy about who we are so that we can be happy about leaving something going.
Okay, well that's an interesting perspective.
And I know it has relevance. For children who are walking around stuck in their phones, I mean, please.
Well, there is that.
Like, how about a place where you might connect with somebody on a real level
Yeah.
with fresh air and the Milky Way over your head?
Yeah.
And you may have never seen the Milky Way?
Well, there is that.
Yes.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Because that hasn't been mentioned before.
Oh, there's another Duncan Teague. Dr. Duncan Rex Teague. And his thing is, he's an astronomer. He's in Memphis. And he works at a fern bank too. And his thing is the very thing I just said. That there are children being born, living out their lives, and having never seen the Milky Way.
It's true.
Because of light pollution in the cities.
Yeah.
If we didn't do anything but run a busload of queens up there just to do that, it would be worth it.
It's true.
Because then some gay spirit visions go happen. Whether we have a program planned or not.
Yeah. Okie dokie.